Hi, um, I'm recording a short video today. I've been in just like a really deeply steeped emotional place because it was my grandfather's funeral yesterday and I got to see lots and lots of family members, close and distant, that I haven't seen in a long time, and a lot of family friends. And I should put this on. I'm probably gonna cry a lot during this video. If that perturbs you, then don't watch it. Crying is not actually a bad thing, it's just the release of energy. So. This is my granddad's hat and this is his shirt. And I gave a speech at the ceremony yesterday. He's like, are we going somewhere? Come here, little boy. Come here. I gave a speech at the ceremony, and it was about how I had to move in with my grandparents in 2012 when I left Carnegie Mellon for the first time to start treatment at the Western Psychiatric Hospital of Pennsylvania. And my grandfather's motto was to show up and do the work. And so I talked about how much of a failure I felt like and how hard that time was for me. But how being with them and sitting with him, and he drove me, and it was a very, it was intensive outpatient program. So I lived with them, but I was there for 12 hours a day. And throughout the past 12 years, I've learned to show up for myself and do work in a different way. And he lived long enough to see me do that. And that has meant the world to me. But I also talked about how it's not what you think it is. I always resented it. And I talked about this in my speech too, where at 18 years old, that didn't motivate me. It frustrated me. And I couldn't understand why there wasn't any nuance or grace for what I was going through. And I felt like everybody was telling me that it was easy and I just had to show up and then do the work. And I couldn't do it. And, I know now that I was showing up to a different kind of work, and that's what I needed to do. And I'm really grateful for a lot of things. And it's really weird that my grandfather has passed away at the time. It's very divinely guided in a super crazy way, because whatever was started within me back then, 2012, and everything that has happened in my life since then, which has not been easy. There's a lot of stuff that no one in my life knows about as well. There's a lot of things that I talk about, but there's a lot of things that people don't know. And I'm basically exiting that chapter, and it's been a really long time. And the fact that my grandfather has died is crazy, because I don't want to say this out loud because it's going to sound wrong, but it's I don't need him anymore. He lived long enough to see me figure it out, and it was he needed to know and see that I was going to be okay. But now that he's gone, and I can connect with his spirit, and a lot of my family members, even people who are less spiritual than I am, or as readily connected, they do feel deeply connected to him, and they understand, he was with us in the church yesterday. It felt very, it was a super emotional day, and there was a lot of tears, and it was really hard to get through everything, but there was a lot of laughs as well. I think that's important. We wanted it to be a celebration, and my grandfather was a very funny person, and he had, here's a picture of my grandparents as Adam and Eve. They didn't take life very seriously, and they had a very good time, and so it's very easy to laugh, and you can't not talk about him and give tribute to the kind of person that he was without talking about that. And something else that or at least entering that energetic space, which was the gift of him, he wasn't there yesterday, obviously, because it was his funeral, but his energy was in that we couldn't even stay sad. And that's beautiful. That's a beautiful thing. Hear me? I'm in such an intense space, and I'm just processing a lot of things, right? But something else I talked about in my speech. Wait, no way. Okay. I'm sorry. I keep seeing cards here. I'm not going to get into it yet. We do have triumphant success, but I thought it was a different one. The way that my life went when I got to school was that I was not supposed to be on SSRI medications, but I was, and those are antidepressants. I was on Prozac and something else, and that was misdiagnosed to me at some point during high school. Not what I needed, but because of whatever happened to me in high school, one thing leads to another. It's a very slippery slope with teens and youths and getting put on medication, because the way that medication made me feel and behave and everything led to different kinds of behavior that led to more medication, and it didn't ever stop. And I basically, getting to school and having this wonderful, immersive, like, oh my God, I'm free. I'm a college kid. I met all these people. I had all these crushes and made all these friends and wanted to rush sororities, and which I did. And like, then I started having some issues because I had been basically like coasting in this manic space. And I do live with a bipolar diagnosis, and I accept that. I don't want to be a person who's like defensive around that. Call me whatever you want. That's fine. I'm speaking to the doctor. If it makes you feel more comfortable to say this is actively bipolar, then that's fine. But here's the deal, is that I've been to enough doctors in my life to know that they all have a different opinion. And none of them really suited me. None of them ever really seemed right. None of the medications that served the diagnosis that they thought was right were right. And it was really affirming for me yesterday to be able to, have people come up to me after the ceremony and tell me that they appreciated hearing what it is that I had to say. People told me things that were private. People told me, like, I have somebody who's struggling. You should keep telling your story because other people are going to need that type of inspiration, as far as like being unwell in an unwell world is very common, and it's becoming increasingly more common. And I think that I'm very open and that I've shared tons and tons of stuff, but it's weird that people don't think that I've done that. There's people in my life that are like, when are you going to start speaking and sharing your work and like doing the art? I'm like, I've always been doing it. Have I not been? Do you guys not know that I'm trying to? It's funny to me because some of the very intense levels of self-criticality. Sorry, by the way, that my voice is so hoarse. This is just how I am after a family function. I've been so hard on myself over the years, and I was just telling my mom about this earlier this morning, saying that it's almost like it's had to be like this for so long. I had to have this passage of nobody on earth knowing who I am and struggling and still being as talented as I am now and as smart and still making the same work and thinking about the same things, but doing it alone and being tortured by it and not understanding it and having to figure it all out. And now understanding it, not having any of those issues, not taking any medication, fully having like exited all of that wasn't my fault. And it took so long. And it's done. And there's so many people that are caught up in things like this, and by that I just mean like everybody just wants to feel okay, and a lot of us need help and we don't know how to get it. And I certainly felt like that in my life, and it's not like, I don't feel, my family did when I was unwell at various points in my life. My family did what they thought was the best thing for me. So did the doctors. It's not a person's fault. This is an issue. It's a systemic societal issue. A lot of people don't know what to do, and I truly feel like there are people like myself where it's like you create something. It's self-healing. The tattoos that I have on my wrists, I haven't shared this in a little while, and I might have a new viewer or two, I never know. So I'll just share this, but all of these tattoos I drew in my notebooks when I was in rehab, and all of them are dialectical behavioral therapy, mindfulness tools where, like, if I was having a hard time with something and I could look at my arms, I would reset somehow. They all have a hidden meaning. And for me, it's like you could call it art therapy, but I was very receptive to certain therapeutic modalities when I was in treatment because I wanted to get better. It was just that they needed a little bit of like an augmentation, or they needed to, dialectical and cognitive behavioral therapy was developed in 1985 by a woman named Marsha Linehan. 1985? Why are we treating the problems of today with methods that were developed in 1985? That's exactly what I said to my counselors and psychiatrists when I was in treatment. I asked them that. And I told them what I was doing. I said, I think it needs a little bit of help. So I'm turning it into pictures and I'm going to get them tatted. And they were like, okay, because I was mentally ill. So they were like, are you sure? We heard that tattoos are permanent. And I was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure. I hate being questioned because whenever we question somebody without supporting them, even if we're concerned from a loving place, it can make them question themselves. And I know for a fact that a lot of people in my life, when I share with them about how things have been for me, and they're shocked to know how absolutely insecure I've been at so many moments, they're so surprised by that. And I'm like, don't you see that the amount of like confidence and conviction is because I've had to develop that? There's something going on with what it is that my spirit guides are asking me to do in this life, where they have asked me to become so unfuckwithably clear in the conviction around certain things. Like, how does that, come to be? I don't know. I think if I were to try to put it into words, it would be that first I had to doubt absolutely all of it, and feel like it was not worthwhile, or any of that. And so on the one hand, I could look at that part of my journey, like being really heavily medicated, feeling very suicidal, not feeling creative, not feeling smart, feeling deeply, deeply, stuck and misunderstood. And the hardest thing was that I knew that everybody wanted to help, but that they couldn't. I think that was like more disturbing to me, because I was like, I actually know that this isn't my problem. The world's just sick, and I felt caught up in it. And I didn't know what to do. I couldn't fix it. I couldn't just get off my medications. I was on 7 or 8 at one point. That is a ton of medication. And so I thought that I would just, like a trigger warning, please, if you need help, contact somebody. There are suicide hotlines available, or you can email me if it's not as urgent, and I'm happy to counsel with you and help you. But I wanted to kill myself. I was like, I just don't understand. If I can see the world to be this way, and I want to do all these things and make all these things, but somebody like me who can see this way is treated like this, then I can't do it. And that's how I felt for so long. And it's like, there's nothing wrong with the path, because that level of hopelessness that a lot of people, I think, I'm a very happy girl. They don't understand. They would not think that I've felt that way, but I was made to feel that way so that I can empathize in the way that other people feel when they get to that point, because it's no joke, and we need to be able to help each other through letting other people know that we do understand what it is they're going through, or at least that we are present with them enough to try. There are so many people who don't think that anybody cares and that it's not worth it, and that really upsets me. But here's the other thing, being upset about all of that doesn't help. Again, we have to go into the new direction, which is why I choose to be so happy. I think, personally, you can choose to be just bubbly and alight with life if you want to, and carry that energy into spaces where you go with you, and let other people feel it, despite how challenging things are in the world right now. I think something strange, this makes me think of a quote, but I won't be able to pull it out. Is it Rosa Jackson? Who is that? Was she the woman Rosa Parks? I don't remember what I was going to say. Well, yeah, what was I going to say? No, there's a lot going on here. Okay. We're going to let that all go. I'm going to let it go. I'm going to pull a card. Thank you for listening. I just had to offload this. I do know that the YouTube channel is supposed to be about healing modalities, and I think because the business that I'm creating is still in such early days, it's very easy to take up space on the internet as a card reader because there's so many card readers. It's sort of like a form, you know? But this is a message too to anybody who has a similar practice or a creative practice or like could start a YouTube channel. Like, it doesn't have to be cards, right? There can be a bunch of people on YouTube doing things, but like, I think that as with anything, even though there are free thinkers, especially within this community, and you know, authentic people connecting and inspiring subgroups, there's also sheeple followers that get trickled into it who aren't as connected. Do you know what I mean by that? Like, I don't ever want to call people out, but there are people who aren't really like, they're just, it's just more of like a trend thing. And I see a future, the message for people who have creative practices and stuff, it's like, sometimes we look out in the world and we only develop what it is that we want to do based off of the inspiration. You know, we think that we come up with original ideas, but what is originality if not, you know, the amalgamation of what you've been inspired to like and therefore replicate when you reproduce things subtly. Even when we don't think we're bringing in aspects of something that we saw before, we can't help but do that. And our dreams show us that, because they say you can't create a face. Your dreams are going to be people that you've seen before, even if it looks like this guy, you know, and you don't know him. You probably saw him at the grocery store. You just didn't clock it consciously. So, I mean, that's a weird conversation these days because of like deep fake stuff and creating faces that don't exist, right? Well, if you have the key of discernment, you'll be able to tell what faces are AI and what photos are AI and what ones aren't. And what drives me absolutely bonkers is that the Washington Post put out an article yesterday. Here's the screenshot of me having screenshotted it. I didn't click on the actual article. I screenshotted the preview of the article's heading because that's what I tend to keep track of. It said something about how the election results are threatened because of AI deepfakes and no one can stop it. Like, who wrote this? Like, is this coming from, so the Washington Post, like, okay, thanks for telling us. You see what I mean? This is pre-predictive programming. No one can stop it. That's totally unhelpful, right? That you put that article out there, somebody reads it, and then they're all uptight, like, oh shit, like the election, like we can't trust anything. That's not a mistake. That's on purpose. That's how those news articles are designed to make you feel. And one person might argue that's information that we need, Mariah. Like, they're putting that very important information out here because if we don't know that, then we wouldn't know that. And if we didn't know that, then we wouldn't know that deepfake is threatening the election. It's like, well, what if that's been happening for a very long time and they just decided to put out the article today, you know? What you don't know will not actually kill you. You might actually have some peace of mind left over. I want to start an internet sweeping petition that's called unfollow all the blue check marks. Hashtag unfollow the blue check marks. Because that would really dismantle things. I think it's interesting that like people use social media as like reliable news outlets these days. This really shifted in 2016 when Trump got elected and started migrating important announcements about foreign policy and different kinds of things to Twitter. That didn't used to be acceptable, if you recall. And now it's not so many years later, but that's sort of fine, you know? We just like, presidents are like tweeting at each other. Like, I'm sorry, when... That doesn't seem great because tweets can be falsified. You know, this is where the whole thing gets into like, why is politics just a meme now? So anyway, back to creating a face and all that. I got on this because I was talking about the originality thing. And I do think that with more and more people just stepping into spaces where, like, what's very cool for me is that my creative inspiration my whole life and being able to see very far into different timelines, which I've had the ability to do since I was young. I didn't know it then, but I have, which is why I've always had the same passions, is because, I'm pointing at this picture, by the way. What I talked about the other day, I talked about as in terms of an energetic exercise where you see this grand vision or this thing that you want to manifest, and then you vacuum seal it down into a tiny little seed. It could be like a beautiful little pumpkin seed that's like shiny and iridescent, Or it could be like a blue, pretty, like fuzzy, like koosh. Remember those kooshes? Kooshes were so fun in gym class. But anyway, something that makes sense to you. If you were to have synesthesia, or that ability to have like, you know, quantum interplay with senses, like what is it? What does it look, feel? You know, does it have a temperature? Whatever. Imagine it as the container. It's a capsule that stores, it's like concentrate from a can or something, or like for cold brew. It's very, very potent. It also makes me think about DNA and how tightly that's spiraled, but anyway. You have the visualization of it going into your heart space, and then when you connect with this space in your body, when you move your awareness into your heart space and you feel the same sensation, you allow it to be like, you know, tingly or warm or whatever, energetically, that seed contains your dreams. You know, if you thought of them and put them into it, and when you connect with that and let that guide you forward, you don't have to remember or recall all of the details of it. You will be aligned. And the only other thing is that every now and then you take it out and you like unvacuum seal it. I had a vision of somebody taking something out of a small like rucksack, and then like they opened it like it was a map, but then it like turned into like a cabin. It was really cool. Like some type of futuristic, like you shrink it, or like in Harry Potter or something. But anyway, you can always take it out, take a look, and modify it. There's no wrong path, right? There's just micro adjustments to continue to dial into the space that makes you feel like that beautiful, resonant, like I'm truly connected with these things. I saw a meme, I'll put it on the screen. Romanticize something. Believe in the things that you need to believe in order for your dreams to come true. That's actually as simple as it is. Because when humans start to believe in things, those things might just render into reality. Look around. People will get it soon, which is exciting. It's very exciting that people will start to get this soon. It's very much on theme for what I talked about in the 2024 forecast videos, with having to start to accept, if a person has not in the past, that their internal monologue and dialogue does have a very direct and real impact on their external experience. Always. That was one of the biggest revelations for the collective and the masses for Q2. And actually, I don't think that I'm just saying that again because that's going to become very relevant here in a minute. So, oh yeah, I'm not quite done. We'll get to the cards, but I just have to finish up that thought. You can always adjust the vision, whatever. It's this beautiful exercise where we can keep it in our heart, connect to it, yada, yada. When a person really does that, which I think I have, right? Not to toot my own horn, but you can tell because their work is original. Their energy is original. They are themselves. And other people we all have completely unique selves that have creative, they lend themselves to a completely unique creative footprint or template that a lot of people do not initiate within their life. And my belief is that a lot of people's spirits are drawing them towards this creative template I think everybody has the potential for like genius level innovation in whatever field. It doesn't have to be the creative arts, but in whatever field it is, you know, and it also doesn't have to be like engineering. Like it could just be that kind of work. Again, with unique combinations. I see lots of visions these days from a future where we have types of things that don't make any sense right now. Sort of like if it was 2015 and you, I don't know, saw a couple news clips of what's going on today, you'd be like, that's not real. That would never happen. We'd be so awestruck if we got to see clips of the future now, just like we would be if we were given the chance to see clips of now's world, today's world, back then. But what I see is like things have changed so much, and one of the beautiful shifts is that a lot of people have broken out of any type of following or herd mentality, and a lot of people were actually there's different kinds of team members and stuff, you know. herds aren't necessarily a bad thing. That's a thought I've never had before, because I'm very much like independent. You know, like, oh, the sheeples, like, why won't they wake up? That type of energy. But it's actually not a bad thing, because we need a whole ecosystem, right, of people. I just want for people to do what they want to do and be happy at the end of the day. But we are designed differently. I am somebody, whereas in, like, if I'm in a friend group and I have friends, one of my best friends my whole life, she knows that I've always wanted to be famous. I just like attention and I like sharing things, and I think it would be fun. She's like, I would never want that. I would never want any type of attention. I would never want for people to have access to like information about me, or I would never want for anybody to have the drive to find out more information about me or anything like that. Like, whereas, I'm not like that. So anyway, I'm just seeing a way for people to create these beautiful, very unique, kind of like in the ancient kingdoms, careers, right, for themselves, but they're purpose-based careers. And in my past life, for whatever ancient civilization this was, aquatic, highly advanced consciousness-based technology society that used a lot of, renewable energy is the best way to put it for our understanding in today's terms. Renewable energy resources, like via elemental energies, water and fire and stuff, but also a different kind of energy that humans today are not used to, because it has to do with like cosmic energies and like actually anchoring in light grids that still exist on the earth, that are getting reactivated now, as a lot of people know, but that have been dormant and interrupted, right? That's what the man-made matrix is. So none of the man-made interference matrix existed then. Those grids operated differently with the stargates and the portals that run through Earth. And my very specific role in this lifetime, it was a job, right? A profession, but nobody else could do it. So think about like fables or myths where it's like they were the shaman. I was like a shell lady. I still am. This cracks me up every time I talk about it, because I can't take myself seriously, but I don't have a good visual aid at the moment. But I do. I'm just too lazy to get, there's never a shell too far away from me, is my point. And there's one over there now, but it was a beautiful, beautiful, almost like hybrid creation. It was a biological specimen, but also technology in some ways. And it helped to power our city. And it was also something of an oracle. Like, I connected with this shell, massive, like a spiral shell on an axis, and it had this crank, and it would turn, and sometimes it would do that by itself, but like I was often with it. I was sort of its facilitatress. And like its mother, I don't even know how to describe it. And this vision, it changes a lot when I revisit it, because past lives are simultaneous selves, if you think about it, right? Time and space is very flexible, so you can get different types of, if you do any type of stuff with Akashic past life readings or integration, you start to have little glimpses or memories of past lives through dreams or different forms of recollection. Once you know about them and you try to tap into them and visit them, you'll realize that you can do that and have different visions from them ongoing, which is overwhelming. It's funny, as I say that, my mind takes me back to, I don't really know, like the 1700s, and I was this blacksmith man in this like sort of like village, and I had this weird barn, and like I was just super lonely all the time. I spent like tons and tons and tons of time alone, but I made lots of stuff, and my hands were always burnt. Really, really like knotted, gnarly hands that were burnt a lot. But every now and then I get a vision during my waking life in this reality from those different lives, right? If I have some type of vision and I'm like, ugh, I'm in the barn, and I feel the way that I felt in that life, it's very interesting, right? In the body, I'm like, I feel like a man who's been working his whole life and have to release it. And it could be a fleeting feeling that takes me, but it's like, almost like my back is broken, like my posture is different. It's a real phenomenon or a sensation that I'm getting in my body, but I release it. And the reason why that would queue up in my awareness at a certain point during the day is because within entanglement at the quantum level, something I'm experiencing is triggering something that happened at that time in that life. Part of the reason why I've been able to change so much with the different levels of psychic gifting that I've awoken, or at least intensified for me since the beginning of 2023, is because a lot of my past life recognition picked up at the beginning of 2023. I've had different memories or abilities to access them for many years prior, but it just went to a new level this year. And because of that, it really is kind of like the show Sense8. If you haven't seen it, I would watch it. I don't know if they took it down. Maybe they did. That's another interesting thing, is that sometimes when things get too assistive for helping to wake up the humans, they just disappear, and that pisses me off. But like people's YouTube channels, right? It's very interesting how people don't understand that free speech is censored when we have people monitoring and deciding what is community guidelines safe or not. Like, I'm just a little philosopher. Calm down. I'm allowed to suppose things. And if I'm not, we need to ask why. People's channels get deleted and stuff like that. But anyway, the show is pretty accurately done. It's not as like Hollywood or cinematic as that. And there's some random side threads to the plot that I don't connect to. But the general gist of it is that they help each other. These beings, they help each other as if they share an oversoul. An oversoul would be the same higher self. And then the beings, as they're incarnated in physical, are different, but they're connected, and they have the ability to sort of be in each other's consciousnesses and awarenesses in an ongoing way, and kind of float back and forth and swap consciousnesses so that they can handle each other's problems, when one aspect of the oversoul would be more fitted to one situation. And I relate to that because I feel like I've been leaning upon, if we think about a lot of the themes in my messaging for months now, which, by the way, everything's in divine timing for me in my videos. There's a lot of stuff that I've said that I don't even remember that I've said, but it's all channeled. So whatever ends up coming out, like, I always trust it, because I know that from seeing the way that this works within me for so many years, like, I will do something and not know that it's going to mean something 6 months later. And that's why I always trust my intuition. Sometimes things are a slow burn, and sometimes you have to plant certain seeds and you're not really even aware that you're doing it when you do it. But that's how things work. So there's just been tons of messages that reflect the kind of healing and integration that I've been doing. Sense of self, solar plexus on the bottom when I say that, around like at the beginning, like truly December of 2022 and the beginning of 2023, I was getting a lot of past lives, but they were all about being a man, being a certain kind of man. And that was interesting to me because I was like, how do I feel about all of this? It was very weird. It was like almost validating, or weird in the sense that it felt like it justified this burnt out apatheticism that a young woman of in the way that I am a young woman doing the things that I'm doing shouldn't have, like this unjustified existential burnout. It was almost like those memories helped me create a different relationship to my own ability to persevere, like masculine healing, and like what it means to take up space with the gifts properly wielded that a man can possess. What's interesting is that we can come into this world and inherit, even no matter what gender you are. I, as a woman today, can bring certain preconceptions about what it means to be a man, even though I'm not one, into this life. I learn things, we all learn things from our primary caregivers about gender roles, really. But I believe that we also kind of have these preconceptions. They're just very, very subliminal and nuanced, so they're hard to like study or track. But some of our preconceptions around quote unquote, like what a man should be or what a woman should be or how they feel or whatever. They're already with us somehow, and we just don't really realize that. But I'm kind of getting off onto a thing, and I think I have to go pick up my brother. I did just want to share that. I'm obviously like in a pretty flying high state right now because I've been talking nonstop. I have no idea what I've said. I can't believe it's been 35 minutes. This was supposed to be like a 16-minute video, but this is what happens. So, it's an exciting time. I really encourage anybody who does have some type of like creative thing, like really, this is, even though the world is going a certain way, there's no better time to just like start seeing life as a fun game. It's going to be all right. It's not that serious. It never has been. All the doom and gloom is actually a constant, and it's hung over everybody's heads, asking to be acknowledged. And if you would like to prioritize your personal peace and start just creating things and trying to imagine a way of life outside of all of that and what that means for humans, then you're allowed to do that. And yeah. Also, doing that will really help people experience radical healing with certain types of disease and ailments, because so much of the causes of that is like embedded with the way we treat ourselves. So I've shuffled this deck profusely throughout the time that I've been talking. So we know for a fact that all of the energy of today and these messages is in the deck, and we're ready. What's our current? Interesting, it's the waiting game. Two of Wands. So it's a strategy, it's an anticipatory energy. What's our energy to embrace with the waiting game? Truth. Yeah, judgment. And look at this, it's 2-0, and this is 2. 202 could be a synchronistic number. And look at that, that makes me feel like what I was talking about. I talked about the shell as an oracle, being able to see into something and connect with something. And also just, I don't know how to translate this message, so there's so much there and I don't want to ramble for a million years. And also Q2 is what I'm getting. So the waiting game in truth, there are a few things that can be hidden for long, the sun, the moon, and the truth, or how the saying goes, but the truth has always been there. The truth is always there, whether or not people choose to acknowledge it. And a lot of us are waiting for other people to acknowledge certain truths, but you don't. I mean, if you know your truth, you are allowed. It is your birthright to operate within that reality. Very interesting energy coming off of these cards, and I do have to get going, so I'm not going to go into all the messages I just received, but you can use your intuition to kind of distill where I was going with all of that. There's a lot here. What's the energy to release? Wow. It's a shadow. Is this the moon? I believe this is the card of the moon, the unseen, or the intuition, right? Shadow. What's interesting is that, like, there's the higher self, but we are dualistic creatures. There's the shadow self as well as the higher self. And the shadow self is always going to be there. When we heal, you know, we are beings of free will. You know, the angel and the devil on the shoulder is a very real thing. If a person is a good person and does a bunch of amazing things, it doesn't mean that they don't have the same temptations or inclinations as everybody else to, like, take the lower road, right? Every single second and moment is a choice. And the shadow that lives within all beings is just like our ability to do bad things. We can. I could walk outside and go up to the nearest person and smack him in the face if I wanted to. Doesn't everybody know what it's like to be like standing on the top of a mountain holding something like your phone and being like, I just want to like chuck it as far as I can. Like, you get these weird impulses. Like, this is going to sound deeply deranged, but please understand where I'm coming from. Don't judge me. But like, sometimes I'll be driving. It sounds unsafe too. It sounds like I'm a threat to other people. So also don't get worked up over this statement. I am not a threat to the others around me. I deeply care about road safety, okay? Disclaimer. But as a thought experiment, sometimes when I'm driving, I'm just like, I could, in the realm of possibility, I could just, like, how would that feel? That would be so crazy to just turn the steering wheel so hard and just like flip the car. Not that I would ever do that, right? I pray for everybody's safety on the road and that everybody's safe in their cars and everything like that, okay? But those thoughts, and to just briefly touch on this, because I feel like it's hard to talk about this without talking about this, but it is like, the angel and the devil on the shoulder, like God and Satan, right? Or like the good in a person or the bad in a person. Power is morally neutral. When you are favored by God, you are also favored by the devil. Your power can be used to facilitate the dark will on earth. And it's not as, what really alienates people from being able to hold space for these conversations is being like, okay, so what? Is that like Satan? Is he like running it? Like, what are you talking, Don't think about it like that. Maybe it's not, this is a collective manifestation. Every single person on earth is responsible for what's happening on earth in a weird way. So it's very Wizard of Oz, which is absolutely hilarious it's not, it's timed and it's intentional as to why that's being relaunched and they're putting out Wicked and everything. It's going to be this big blockbuster hit or whatever. Is because what we realized at the end of that is that there was this whole, it was all a facade. The Great Wizard of Oz, he was just like a little guy, like it was all there are forces working in the world, but and there have been things hidden from the masses that encourages them to believe in a version of reality that would convince them to make choices that aren't in their highest good. The forces that have set that situation up, that's the worst thing you can do to another being, is try to control and limit their free will. That goes against the universal laws of what we are meant to do to one another. And when you do that to another being, you pay karma for it, because that's not how it's supposed to go. You're allowed to be as absolutely evil as you want in the world, right? But there's nothing that exists outside of love and universal life force. Those things are just, you could see them as misbehaving children in the grand cosmic clock. They will have to find their way back at some point. They're just acting out for a few millennia. God's source energy is realizing itself by becoming everything that it possibly can be. It's taking a while. Every point of consciousness is a chance to experience a new way to express life and consciousness. This world and this reality is just one experiment of how consciousness can go. And so what we're entering as a collective is realizing that we're not as smart as we think we are, and that we're part of something. And we're about to be, it's a beautiful initiation for humanity. Our little experiment on Earth has reached a very crucial point. That's it. So releasing, I mean, the notion that you're not in control of your life. You can choose, no matter what your circumstances are. This is something that I haven't said in a long time either, but I've definitely shared this before on the channel. When I was a kid, I had this weird propensity to just play this game with myself, and I would be like sitting around, I'd be in the car, or sometimes I'd be like on the ski lift, or sometimes I'd be in the kitchen or in like a waiting room, and I'd just be like, if I opened my eyes now and I was like, I didn't know who I was, or I didn't know where I was, or I didn't even know, like, I didn't recognize my mom, like, I just liked to pretend, but I was like, what would, from this point forward, I start to believe was the truth or was happening? And like the next thing that would happen would be like somebody would like come in and say something, like I'd pick up with a narrative and start to imagine how I would feel about all of that if I didn't know anything about myself. And we can kind of do that all the time. You're born again each moment. Every single chance is a new decision that you get to make. And so a lot of the times when people say things to me around different forms of trying to workshop scenarios, right? And create space for movement and progression and like activation within stuck or stagnant situations, people are very, 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 very quick. That actually really hurts. So that wasn't great. Bad idea. Goodbye. Even if they are receptive to help and they don't want to be defensive, it's natural for a person to basically kind of defend like why their problem is unsolvable because they haven't been able to solve it. If it was solvable, they would have solved it. They wouldn't need any help. You wouldn't be talking about it. And if it was solvable, but they couldn't solve it, they don't like that. We don't like that. We want, if it was solvable, we want to be smart and competent enough to be able to figure out how to solve it and then do it ourselves, right? And so there's something also within that where a person will also sort of just like explain why it's not solvable and also kind of share what it is they might have done to try to solve it. But if a person were to say to me, there's a reason why none of your beliefs or suggestions have any traction here, and then they tell me what their reason is for why not, and I am able to surpass those in a lot of cases, but sometimes that person actually won't understand. Do you know what I mean? Like, no matter what I say, they're actually not consciously willing to accept the new idea, or there's a deeper level of misunderstanding around how I see the world. So when I speak to them about my beliefs, they hear what it is that I'm saying, and then they think that I see things a certain way, but they actually have fundamentally misunderstood what I've said from the jump. And that happens a lot to me, but I used to completely have no idea. Now I tend to have a little bit more of an intuitive understanding, because how that panned out in a negative way in the past is that I would just be very naive, really, and like trusting and hoping that people would get me. And again, it goes down to like, it comes back to like intent and good intention and will and how we treat one another. A lot of people have wanted to understand me. I think about certain former partners who I think really loved me and wanted to date me, but I still felt very lonely in those relationships because I was like, you don't understand though. Like, I know you want to and you're acting like you do, but I know that you don't. And I can't live that life, right? I can't pretend. I have to end up with somebody who does get it and gets me, as we all should. So with that, I'm going to go. And moving on is what I got. I cut the deck. Thank you for watching if you did. I just saw 4747, which breaks down to 1111.